Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Links are in the description below. Please show some love of the author and me. On to the show.
Without anyone to follow, Augustine descended from the passage in the castle and entered the dungeon. After letting the guards who were originally guarding the dungeon leave, Augustine continued to go deeper and reached the bottom of the dungeon. This layer, the detainees are all high-ranking professionals, hero pros, or epic heroes. His Majesty, I was wronged. Your Majesty, I am willing to surrender. I am willing to work for your Majesty's blade, and work for His Majesty. Your Majesty, spare me. I still have my mother and children at home. Augustine's figure appeared, and several heroes who were imprisoned in this dungeon immediately began to cry. Those who can be bought by the lords and nobles and participate in the independence of the territory are naturally not those with backbone. While imprisoned in the dungeon, these professionals wanted to switch from the lords and nobles to Augustine's a hero. Even if it is just a hero professional, it is not a dungeon that can be easily imprisoned, so before being imprisoned in the dungeon, Augustine had all these heroes put on the forbidden magic ball. Forbidden magic is a tool. The effect of this item is to completely block the energy flow in the professional body. Whether this energy is the magic value of the caster, or the physical value of the physical attack professional, so being imprisoned in this dungeon and guarded by professionals who retain full combat power, these heroes have no chance of escaping the dungeon. A great lord, 8 hero professionals, 6 epic heroes. This is all the heroes imprisoned in this dungeon. Originally, the great lord also recruited 2 legendary heroes, but when Augustine led the attack, the 2 legendary heroes simply resisted and fled. Without the legendary hero to rely on, the remaining rebels are naturally turkeys, vulnerable to a single blow. Aled, go to the gate of the dungeon and guard. Don't let him in even if it's a teacher without my permission. His eyes swept over the prisoners, and Augustine's voice without a trace of emotion slowly spread in the dungeon. 490 With the words of Augustine, the shadow under his feet moved slightly, and a figure emerged. Legendary assassin, shadow hunter, minister of imperial intelligence, Ord, your Majesty, be careful yourself. With a slight salute to Augustine, Ald left the dungeon and appeared at the entrance of the dungeon according to Augustine's instructions, preventing anyone from entering. So, in the entire dungeon, except for Augustine, only those rebel prisoners remained. Frank, aren't you going to say something? Without the interference of idlers and others, Augustine looked at a fat man in a gorgeous morning robe in the dungeon. Although the big fat man was covered in filth, his ferocity remained undiminished. There is nothing to say about winning the king or losing the bandit. I failed, I admit it. However, there is the threat of the King of Bones, and I am afraid that the fate of your royal family of Caesars is not much better than mine. Yes, the King of Bones. He suddenly had no interest in humiliating the lord. A lord, even a great lord, is just one of the many independent and rebellious lords in the empire. Compared with the enemy he really has to face, he is just an ant. His goal is always the King of Bones. Wow. The chains blocking the cell were opened. Without a single guard, Augustine went straight into the cell and faced a lord, 6 epic heroes and 8 hero professionals in the cell. At this time, the lord quietly exchanged glances with several epic heroes. Augustine is a hero. Although they have forbidden magic balls on their bodies, it does not mean that they have no ability to resist at all. Weapons and equipment are disarmed, and the energy in their bodies is completely blocked, but they still have their own bodies. There are 6 epic heroes in the dungeon, and there are 4 heroes in physical attack alone. They join forces. It may not be impossible to take the emperor captive and turn him into himself. Upfi and others escaped from here as hostages. Augustine moved on. Those 4 epic heroes also quietly got ready. When Augustine completely crossed the railing and entered the dungeon, the 4 epic heroes suddenly burst out and rushed towards Augustine. Only boom, 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 boom. 4 muffled beeps in a row. The 4 epic heroes were knocked into the air without any resistance, and crashed into the wall of the dungeon. The huge force that blasted them away even surpassed them before they took the forbidden ring. Historical heroes. The big lord's pupils shrank slightly, and he suddenly realized that Augustine, who had always been a hero in his knowledge, had long since been promoted to the epic rank and not a first-time epic. Yes, Augustine is epic. In less than 2 years, from the original hero rank to the epic rank, becoming an epic hero, Augustine's growth speed can be adjusted to the extreme only. His particularity allows him to easily hide his strength. The entire Caesar Empire, except for Aled, did not know that His Majesty had already achieved epic, and was moving towards a legend. As for the reason, bang bang bang, a few times, all those hero professionals and epic heroes were knocked out, leaving only the Great Lord, and Augustine walked towards the Great Lord step by step. You, What are you going to do? The big lord was a little terrified. Ignoring the great lord, Augustine stepped forward and grabbed the great lord by the neck. Then, the gray pupils suddenly turned pitch black. Augustine's hand that grabbed the great lord also slammed hard. This, evil the devil. Being held by his neck, the great lord was unable to say a complete sentence. He opened his mouth desperately, but only spit out a few low characters. His eyes widened, filled with fear and despair. Slowly, the great lord did not move. He stopped struggling, revealing that his skin in the air was withering, dry and cancerous, symbolizing that the life breath of the creature was also rapidly draining from his body soon. In just over 10 seconds, a lord with a fat head and ears turned from a fat man to a mummified corpse. There was no more life on the dry corpse. Wow. Throwing the dry corpse aside casually, Augustine glanced at the hand that was holding the neck of the great lord, and the darkness in his pupils flickered slightly. Since it has been decided, there is nothing to hesitate. Muttered to himself, Augustine stepped forward again, grabbed the body of a hero professional, who was still in a coma, used his talent again, and began to plunder its vitality. Yes, talent. Just as Sumu has the talent of erosion, and the fish without heart has the talent of divine power, Augustine also has his own unique talent, plunder. Plundering all the vitality to strengthen yourself, and bring endless desolation to the earth. This is the information he perceives from his talent. When Augustine was still the prince of Caesar's empire, an accident caused him to awaken his talent. It was also at that time of awakening that his favorite pet, a pure white sheepdog, was robbed of all its vitality by his talent, and his own life, from a smart sheepdog to a dog, a mummified corpse. Witnessing this with his own eyes, young Augustine was horrified. He quietly buried the mummified body, lied that his sheepdog had lost himself, and dared not tell anyone about his weirdness. He doesn't feel normal. It doesn't look like a normal human at all, but rather like the demons that the legendary heroes, described in the legendary novels, fought against. Also from that moment, there was a secret in Augustine's heart, and a panic. Fortunately, Caesar VII's education is still qualified. Under the education of the emperor, Augustine slowly forgot his talent and his own weirdness. As a knight, he also grew up as a successor to the empire until the decisive battle of Caesar's capital, the power of the King of Bones, the destruction of the imperial capital, and the sacrifice of Caesar VI brought great excitement to Augustine. His plundering talent, which had been hidden for more than 10 years, has awakened again. It was also from that moment that Augustine decided to use his talent to improve his strength. Whenever Aled went to perform a mission, whenever he was alone, Augustine would find all kinds of beasts, and even all kinds of beasts to plunder its vitality, and enhance his power. It is precisely because of the existence of this talent that Augustine was able to leap from the Lord rank to the epic rank at an astonishing speed in less than 2 years. Of course, it is precisely because of his talent that Augustine hid his strength, and has always appeared in front of everyone as a heroic knight. The education of Caesar VII was qualified. Even with deep hatred, even with internal and external troubles, Augustine still maintained his bottom line, and never set the goal of plundering vitality against human beings, even those rebels. Because he knows, it's darkness, it's abyss, it's hell. Once you take that step, you will never come back. Only, when the 3 legendary heroes came to the news of the Sky-Split Fortress, when they knew that the King of Bones had conquered even the ominous species of the Bone Eater, when they understood that they could never be the opponent of the King of Bones, Augustine woke up. Only by blending into the darkness can we fight against the darkness. Since God gave him this talent is his only hope against the King of Bones. So, only the scene before, countless memories flowed through his mind, and the teachings of Caesar VII, and the teacher seemed to sound from his ears. However, at this time, it was difficult to interfere with Augustine. His perseverance, after he made a decision, he would thoroughly implement it. Wow. Throw a mummy away again. Augustine took slow and firm steps towards the 3rd hero professional. Every loot brings a mummified corpse. Every time he plundered, the aura emanating from Augustine became stronger, from the middle epic to the upper epic, from the upper epic to the peak. After he took all the vitality of the 8 heroic professionals, Augustine has stepped from the original median epic to the level of the peak epic. Then is an epic hero. 1, 2, 3. When these 6 epic heroes, like the previous 8 hero professionals, were stripped of all their vitality, and turned from a hero into a mummified corpse, Augustine broke through. He has officially entered the legendary rank, Knight. This was Augustine's original occupation, Holy Knight. This is the legendary career that Augustine originally wanted to transfer. But, when he stepped into the darkness and no longer rejected his talent, his career was forcibly changed by his talent. A terrifying profession that never existed on Anduin was born. Legendary occupation, Desolate Knight. Coming soon, Desolate Knight. This can be said to be a legendary profession, born specifically for Augustine's looting talent, it's powerful. It is also far from the legendary careers that Augustine has seen. Advanced legend transfer is over. A gray halo also quietly unfolded under Augustine's feet. Death Knights have death auras. Fear Knights have fear auras. Even Holy Knights can release Thorns auras. Naturally, the Barren Knight also has its own Barren aura. The aura of desolation unfolds. Imperceptible outward radiation. Augustine could clearly feel that a trace of vitality was being plundered by his own halo. That trace of vitality is also constantly pouring into his body, strengthening himself at the same time. The soil under his feet gradually faded, and the marks on the walls became more mottled. This is a manifestation of all the life in the earth and walls being plundered by him. If someone takes the soil from this dungeon and uses it for planting, he will find that no matter what is planted in this soil, it will not survive, because the life in these soils has long been taken away, lost all vitality. Even if the soil still has all the nutrients a plant needs to grow, it can no longer grow any kind of plant. The Knights of Desolation, plundering all life and bringing desolation to the land in a sense. At this time, Augustine was already enough to rank with Sumu and the Bone Eater. Sumu, the king of skeletons, can set off the undead natural disaster with his own power, and let death and darkness sweep the whole continent. Its development is enough to devour the creatures of the entire world. And what about the Knights of the Wasteland? Plunder the vitality of the earth and bring desolation to the earth. If the Knight of Desolation is strong enough, he can also devour all the vitality of a world, and make the world fall into eternal silence. So, in a sense, Augustine is already the ultimate. The plundering talent is indeed his only hope against the King of Bones. As long as his growth rate is fast enough, one day in the future, he may not be able to become an existence that rivals or even surpasses Sumu. His Majesty, this, a legendary hero, especially an assassin who is extremely sensitive to energy fluctuations, is worried about Augustine's safety when he feels that the vitality in the dungeon is draining, especially when he feels that the vitality in his body is faintly being drawn. The Undead rushed to the dungeon for the first time. Then, he saw Augustine, who had stepped into the legendary rank, the gray light circulating on his body, the gray halo unfolding under his feet, and the more than 10 prisoners who had become mummified corpses. With an exclamation, Augustine, who was immersed in his own power, was awakened. Seeing Undead's appearance, Augustine's face was neither surprised nor delighted. He just put away the halo of barrenness, recovered his strength, and let his strength in the eyes of outsiders fall from the legendary rank to the epic rank, and then fall to hero status. All this, Augustine did not hide it from Undead. After all of this last night, he recovered to become the knight of the heroic rank. Augustine looked at Undead and said softly, "Only by blending into the darkness can we fight against the darkness. Undead, trust me." Undead looked fixedly at Augustine. This is his emperor, the object of his allegiance. He even promised Caesar VII to become the shadow of this young man, and protect the young man in place of Caesar VII. But now, plunder all life and turn a life into a mummy. This kind of method seems to be the ability of those demons that are depicted in legendary novels. Right, the time. Undead was horrified. As the head of the Imperial Intelligence Department, Undead has seen countless darkness, executed countless traitors with his own hands, and seen countless cruel punishments. But that's all within his reach, because that is the darkness between people. Now, this is not the same. This is not an ability a human should have. Undead hesitated slightly, but Augustine had also been standing there, looking at the minister of the Imperial Intelligence Department with his own eyes, looking at his own shadow. He didn't hide it perhaps. It is precisely because of Augustine's frankness and trust that after hesitating for a while, Undead finally got down on one knee and solemnly swore, "Yes, my Majesty. As long as you are still my Majesty, Undead will always be your shadow and guardian." Augustine smiled slightly. He heard the meaning of Undead's words. The premise of Undead's continued loyalty to him is that he is still a man, the emperor of Caesar's empire. If one day, he betrays his human identity and the Caesar empire, the most loyal shadow will also leave. But this is exactly what Augustine wanted to see. "Trust me, Undead. This is the only hope against the King of Bones." Undead was silent. As Augustine's shadow, he naturally knew that the King of Bones had gone to this crack canyon, that the King of Bones had subdued the bone-eating demon worm, and that the King of Bones, who was originally unmatched, was even more terrifying. He was just a shadow, just a guard, and he was overwhelmed by the shadow brought by the King of Bones. How much pressure should this young emperor bear? Quietly, Undead seemed to understand perhaps. As his Majesty said, "This is the only hope against the King of Bones." He let out a long breath, dispelling the negative emotions in his heart, and the legendary assassin's expression became solemn. "Your Majesty, Undead understands. Pack up. Don't let people notice anything different here." Seeing the change in Undead's attitude, a soft smile appeared on Augustine's face, Continue to the next goal in 3 hours. The Empire will eventually be unified, and I need more prisoners. Depart from Scrack Canyon. This time, Sumu didn't initiate a phase shift, or let Nefarian fly over. Scrack Canyon is too far from the Duchy of Sar. Whether it is phase shift or flight, it takes an extremely long period of time. Sumu found a city he had eroded, took the teleportation array directly, and appeared in another city he had eroded in the south of Anduin continent, then head towards the Principality of Sar in this way. It only took him 5 days to arrive at the border of the Principality of Sar. From the Scrack Canyon a principality, even among all human duchies, the Sar Duchy is the smallest, because the total area of this principality is only a few hundred square kilometers, and in this small territory, there are only 3 cities and a dozen towns. Such a principality can be said to be too small to be too small, but it is such a country. But when the entire Anduin continent was dragged into war, it was able to remain neutral. The Principality of Sar will not take the initiative to invade other countries. 0. Ask for flowers. Same. No other country will invade the Principality of Sar, or, even if a country is ready to invade the Principality of Sar, it will eventually cancel the plan for one reason or another. Mysterious and weird. It's approaching evening. Sumu appeared on the border of this mysterious country, with Nefarian and the Gluttony King without much hesitation. Sumu let Nefarian fly towards the territory of the Principality of Sar. He himself, on Nefarian's head, carefully sensed the atmosphere of the entire Sar Duchy. Seemed nothing out of the ordinary. After a few minutes, Sumu opened his eyes in confusion. He neither felt the strong dark aura mentioned in the clues submitted by the player, nor did he encounter the enemy who came to intercept it. Clues that can't be fake, because the clues made up by the player cannot pass the detection of the game rules at all, and submit them to his task panel. This very different encounter made Sumu more and more feel that the Principality of Sar hides a huge secret soon. Nefarian spanned a distance of dozens of kilometers. 0. A small town appeared in front of Sumu. In the afterglow of the setting sun, this small town is quiet and serene. Standing on Nefarian's head and looking down, Sumu can clearly see the blacksmith shop, general store, tailor shop and other buildings in the small town, and can see the residents on the streets of this small town walk, or hurry, or buy the items you need. He saw a few plainly dressed children running out of one house, leaving a string of laughter, and then disappearing into another house. He saw a big man with a drop of a leg carrying the bucket of water, is walking towards his home with difficulty. It can be seen that several farmers have finished their daily work, and are hurrying into the town, wanting to return to their home before the sunset. This is a very normal small town, without the interference of outsiders and the presence of players. The residents of this small town live a peaceful life year after year. However, this is normal. It is the biggest abnormality. At this time, there was a faint coldness rising in Suma's heart, even stronger than when he had just entered the Sky Crack Canyon, and had just encountered the bone-eating demon, because Nefarian is suspended in the air dozens of meters above this small town. Nefarian didn't hide his breath, and Sumu didn't hide his breath either. With the strength of Nefarian and Sumu alone, the breath of death and darkness emanating from them is enough to alarm professionals from a few kilometers, or even dozens of kilometers away. Normally, as early as the first time Nefarian arrived, its huge body and the terrifying aura it exuded shocked the professionals in the small town. This small town with only a few thousand people has long since fallen into panic and despair. Now what? On the simple earthy city wall, the 2 archers yawned boredly, and their eyes swept across the air, as if they did not notice Nefarian's huge figure. The residents of the town, whether they raised their heads or lowered their heads, went about their own business, as if Nefarian and Sumu had never come, as if the small town under their feet is not a real town, but a phantom, them and this small town, in 2 completely different worlds. The gluttonous insect king's spiritual wisdom has just opened, and naturally there will be nothing unusual. It just lay quietly on Suma's shoulders. Nefarian is different. When its eyes swept across this small town, it clearly found the strangeness of this small town. For a time, Nefarian felt a tinge in his heart. It found, since it came out with Sumu, the thrills and excitement it has encountered in this trend are almost equal to the sum of the thrills and excitement it encountered in the hundreds of years before. Go down and have a look. After a slight silence, Sumu spoke. Nefarian did not dare to object, so he could only gradually lower the height and stop on the fairly spacious street in the small town from Nefarian's head. Sumu continued to observe the small town. Same as before, little has changed in this small town. What should the townspeople do or what to do? There was no panic or fear at the arrival of Sumu and Nefarian. It's as if Nefarian occupies a huge body that occupies more than half of the street. It doesn't exist at all. Clatter, clatter, clatter. Take a few steps forward. Sumu appeared in front of the big man, with dripping legs who was carrying a bucket of water and moved in one direction with difficulty. The big man was holding a walking stick in one hand and a bucket full of water in the other. Every 490 difficult move, a lot of water spilled from the bucket and wet the ground. There seems to be nothing different except that Sumu is still ignored. Even Sumu could still see anger, unwillingness, shame and many other emotions on the face of this big-legged man, as if this lame-legged man had just been humiliated, but had to bow his head in order to survive. Phantom, is it true? Muttering to himself, the skeleton sword appeared in Suma's hand. He waved slightly, and the skeleton mawblade drew a cold light in the air, severing the crutch that the lame man was leaning on. Losing his balance, the lame man fell to the ground, and all the water in the bucket was spilled. Waste. I'm not trash. His pupils were slightly red, and the lame man dropped the broken stick in his hand, and with some difficulty he lifted the bucket, using the bucket as a new fulcrum, and moved step by step toward the well. It seems. Want to raise the water. Wow. A sharp cracking sound resounded. The big man's head flies into the sky. Looking at the head that fell to the ground with a face full of unwillingness, looking at the corpse that was crawling on the bucket, and seemed to want to move, looking at the well water mixed with blood and gradually flowing, Sumu felt a little cold in his heart. Pretend to be a ghost. Bullying, eating up this town. With no expression on his face, Suma's pupils flashed with tiny blue flames, and he ordered coldly. Following his words, the gluttonous insect king rushed out instantly, turning into a white light and appearing on the corpse of the lame man, who had lost his head. 2 bone-eating worms flew out and burrowed into the corpse of the big man. Soon, the figure of the gluttonous insect king disappeared, and a white mist flew out from the corpse of the big man, which had become thin and thin, turning into countless white trickles, spreading in all directions. A small town. With only a few thousand people living in a small town, its scale is naturally incomparable to the sky-split fortress. In just a few minutes, the bone-eating worms that split infinitely shrouded the entire town, and ate all the creatures in the town into human skins. After doing all this, the gluttonous insect king returned back on Suma's shoulders. After a careful perception, Sumu found that after devouring the bones of all the creatures in the whole town, the strength of the gluttonous insect king increased again. It's just because the number of creatures in the town is too small and the rank is generally low, making this time's strength growth far less than the one in the sky-split fortress. That is to say, these are all real humans? Squinting his eyes slightly, Sumu returned to Nefarian. Go directly to the royal city of the Principality of Sar. No matter what the Principality of Sar hides, its biggest secret must be hidden in the largest city in this small principality, the king city of Sar. Subsequently, Nefarian's huge figure rose into the sky. With the afterglow of the setting sun, this small town with only a piece of human skin left gradually disappeared into the darkness. Nefarian is fast. Perhaps it was because of the fright he received in the small town, or perhaps because he felt that Sumu was in a wrong mood. On the way to the king of Thrall, Nefarian took out all his milk, gallop all the way. Before the last rays of the sunset fell, Nefarian arrived at the king city of Thrall. As a royal city, the king city of Sar is still not big. The 10-meter-high city wall is guarded by teams of professionals, and there are probably only a few 100,000 residents living in this city. In this small principality, this is already the largest city, and in other human kingdoms, it is at best a medium-sized city. When Sumu and Nefarian arrived, the gates of Thrall's city were closed. The team of professionals originally stationed on the city wall returned to their barracks, and the hundreds of thousands of residents in the city also returned to their homes at this time. Day and night are the dividing line. When night falls, all the residents of this small principality will fall into a deep sleep. The last ray of light fell. Darkness replaced light. At this moment, Sumu finally felt the change. He clearly felt that when the last rays of the sunset fell, a trace of a strong dark aura rose from the city, shrouding the entire city in a strong dark aura. Perhaps this is the reason for the difference between his previous experience and the clues reported by the players. The player exploring the Duchy of Thrall is an assassin. Sneaking in the middle of the night and entering some places that are afraid to enter during the day is also a common habit of many players who have chosen the assassin and thief professions. When Sumu arrived, it was daytime and everything was normal in the Principality of Sar. When the assassin player arrived, it was night, so he felt the strong dark atmosphere contained in the city of the Principality of Sar. As Sumu feels now, a rich dark aura rose up, shrouding the entire kingdom of Sar in it. The concentration of this dark aura may not be comparable to the City of Bones, or even the City of the Undead in the mountains, but it is definitely not suitable for the survival of ordinary aboriginals and middle and low-level professionals. Bathed in this dark atmosphere for a long time, let alone ordinary people and middle and low-level professionals, even professionals in the elite rank and mentor rank, it is difficult to avoid transforming and sinking in the direction of darkness. Slightly silent, Sumu patted Nefarian on the head. The gigantic ghost dragon descended and appeared on the wall of King Sar's city. After descending from Nefarian's head, Sumu did not rush into the Thrall King city, but entered the barracks where the professionals, who were originally stationed on the city walls, disappeared. Then, skeletons appeared in front of Sumu's eyes. From the arrival of Sumu, those professionals left the city wall and entered the barracks. Until Nefarian landed on the city wall, Sumu appeared in the barracks, and it took only a minute or so. In this minute, the team of professionals lay on the beds of the barracks and became corpses one after another. The erosion of the dark breath is not so fast. In Sumu's perception, the team of professionals who were stationed on the city wall were clearly living people. They were no different from the residents of the small town before, so these professionals were by no means eroded into corpses in a short period of time. Because of the rise of the dark aura, at this time, more than a dozen corpses lay neatly in their resting place. Their weapons are placed on the opposite weapon rack, and their clothes and equipment are neatly arranged. Aside from the fact that the hands, feet and faces exposed to the air are indeed cancerous corpses, it seems that these dozen or so figures are not corpses, but sleepy professionals. Weird, mystery, sensational. Front, the bones were cut out with a sword. The sharp mo knife slashed a corpse together with its equipment. From the fracture of the corpse, Sumu could clearly see the entire detail. It is no different from a normal corpse. Just as this corpse is really a dead body, that has been dead for a long time, has lost all moisture, and has become dry and cancerous. Put away the skeleton sword, Sumu stepped forward and appeared in front of the second corpse. A billowing demonic energy poured out of his body and began to erode the second corpse. Whether the corpse is a human being, a corpse, or some kind of undead, as long as it is corroded and enslaved, Sumu will naturally be able to read its memory and discover the secrets of the living and the dead. That corpse was nothing but an elite rank. When the billowing demonic energy poured into it, in a very short period of time, the corpse was successfully corroded and enslaved by Sumu, and it became an undead under his control. The corpse got up from the bed and stood behind Sumu. The memory of this corpse is also displayed scene by scene in Sumu's field of vision. The memory of the first half of this corpse's life is ordinary. It is nothing more than growing up from a child, gradually accepting professional training, becoming a new professional, and finally adding 5.5 to the city guard of the King of Sar, becoming a team captain. Next, it's not normal. I don't know since when. This corpse has only the memory of the day. He is still the captain of a professional team stationed at the city walls. When the sun rises, he wakes up from his deep sleep and takes his professionals to guard the city wall, and occasionally goes to the city to have some fun. In the evening, near sunset, he would return to the barracks with his men, begin to rest and fall into a deep sleep. Year after year, day after day, keep repeating this process. In the process, a professional didn't find anything unusual. He didn't even find that he hadn't returned to his home in his city for years, or even decades, to see his wife and children. In his perception, he is only on duty today, to be on duty on this city wall. Only he didn't go home tonight. During the day, as a living guard the city walls. At night, as the dead, it turns into a corpse. This professional, or rather, the entire Principality of Sar is repeating this process. The whole life of the Principality of Sar is constantly changing between the living and the undead, constantly wandering on the edge of life and death. Sumu's eyes narrowed slightly. He waved his hand, and the demonic energy in his body poured out again, pouring into the corpses of the remaining dozen or so professionals, eroding them, enslaving them, and flipping through their memories little by little. After a long time, Sumu withdrew his magic energy. He has found a clue. The corpses of these dozen professionals have similar memories to the corpses of the first professional. During the day, they patrol and live according to fixed rules, and at night they turn into corpses and sleep. But in the mind of a professional who came to guild, Sumu found a word, or the name of a secret organization he had heard long ago, Dark Order. I don't know if it was a few years ago or a few decades ago. The dark sect that Argus had mentioned came to this small principality and met with Sar, who had just ascended to the throne of the Grand Duke. Next, the entire Principality of Sar became what Sumu saw, and it continues to this day. Dark Order. Sumu remembers that the first time he heard this name was in the City of the Dead, hundreds of years ago. This secret organization found Argus with the Lich Note and the Ghost Note, hoping that he would analyze the secrets of the two notebooks. However, the original Argus was seduced by the Lich Note and escaped with the Lich Note and the Ghost Note, and later changed to a Lich. The Dark Sect had been chasing and killing Argus for decades before they gradually lost their news. Hundreds of years have passed. Sumu and Argus originally thought that this secret organization had already disappeared in the long river of history, but they did not expect that this secret organization not only continued, but also hidden in the small Tsar Duchy of 01. After knowing all this, Sumu was relieved. No matter how the Dark Order turned the Principality of Tsar into what it is now, the residents of the entire Principality of Tsar wandered on the edge of life and death year after year. As long as it is made by humans, he has nothing to worry about. The once Dark Order was enough to hunt down a lich, or even a big lich. It was not until Argus was sheltered by a ghost leader that the pursuit of him was slowly reduced. That ghost leader, at best, is the pinnacle of the epic rank. In the face of the retreat of the ghost leader, the dark sect was at best as strong as a human kingdom now. Hundreds of years have passed. Even if the dark sect lurks in the shadow of history and continues to grow, the extent of its growth is extremely limited. No matter how powerful, can they be more powerful than the Caesar Empire? No matter how powerful, can they be more powerful than those few human kingdoms that are vying for supremacy? If they are so powerful, why hide in such a small principality? Still not strong enough. Dark Order, slowly chewing on the name, Sumu's eyes lit up slightly. Hundreds of years ago, it was this secret organization that found the Lich Notes and Ghost Notes. In the next hundreds of years, they must have never given up their search for other undead notes now. The Lich Note, Ghost Note, and Skull Note have all fallen into Sumu's hands. He has a hunch. Maybe this Principality of Thrall, the dark sect hidden in the Principality of Thrall, is the key to him finding the last dead note, Death Note. With this knowledge, all the negative emotions in Sumu's heart disappeared. Next, it is nothing more than to find out the people of the Dark Order, get the last note of the dead from their hands, and solve the mystery of the Duchy of Tsar. Probably not simple, but by no means a threat to today's Sumu. Sumu, how? When he got the information he wanted and walked out of the barracks, the first thing Sumu faced was Nefarian's huge skull dragon head. At this time, half of Nefarian's body hid behind the barracks that was much shorter than it, and the huge skull dragon head quietly reached the entrance of the barracks and peeped inside. His eyes swept across the dozens of corpses that were sleeping peacefully, and the soul fire in the huge eye sockets beat fiercely. Nothing. Sumu smiled and said, "It's just a small move by a secret organization. You've heard of that organization, the Dark Order. These people, these corpses, are just imprisoned by a ritual or other existence, and they have been hovering on the edge of life and death. That's it. That is to say, are these undead?" Nefarian was annoyed. It is a ghost dragon, but one of the most powerful undead bosses in the entire Anduin continent. Now, in a small duchy, it is frightened by a group of undead that cannot be called worms. This is a great shame for Nefarian. Annoyed, Nefarian directly raised his jagged dragon tail and slammed it on the barracks, directly tearing and destroying the barracks. Do not. Sumu shook his head slightly and said, "To be exact, they will not be completely transformed into undead until this process of alternating black and white and alternating between life and death is over." Dispelling the fear in Nefarian's heart, Sumu walked towards the interior of Thrall's king city. Learn the truth. Although it is not known how the Dark Order did this, Sumu has been able to determine that the strangeness of the Thrall king city cannot threaten him, nor should it threaten the ghost dragon Nefarian next. It's good to go all the way. Different from the liveliness and prosperity of the day, at night, the king city of Tsar is absolutely silent. No sound. There is no figure, as if it were a huge cemetery rather than a city. Of course, it's not wrong to say it's a cemetery, because Sumu knew that if he broke into the houses to check one by one, he would find that the residents who had lived in the city during the day were now lying on their beds, sleeping peacefully, just like those professionals. It was not them who were once human beings, who were sleeping peacefully, but the dry corpses. Of course, not a single figure does not exist in the entire Thrall King city. When he entered the city from the city wall, and walked for about 1,000 meters, Sumu had already found a figure walking in the direction of the main road only. This walking figure is like a ghost, and has not made any sound from beginning to end. Nefarian, be careful. We probably broke into the stronghold of the Dark Order. With a chuckle, Sumu said. Only no respond. Sumu turned back, and he was surprised to find that Nefarian had disappeared from behind him, and where he went. It is impossible to leave voluntarily. When facing the unknown, this powerful and tyrannical ghost dragon is worse than a mouse. The only possibility is the city is otherwise weird, but it doesn't matter either. After knowing the nature of the Principality of Thrall and the Dark Order, Sumu has no fear. With the strength of Nefarian, it must be difficult for the Dark Sect to threaten it, and at most it will be frightened. After calming down, Sumu stopped thinking about Nefarian. Perhaps it was because he had been on his shoulders, and the king of insect eaters was still there. Sumu walks a few steps, chased towards the ghostly figure not far away from him. Soon, Sumu rushed to the side of the figure. Not only can't hear the footsteps of this figure walking, Sumu can't even touch the figure, whose whole body is shrouded in a hooded robe. 15. This is a phantom, as if they are in different worlds. After several attempts, but still unable to touch the figure, Sumu gave up. He kept walking beside this figure, wanting to see where this strange figure was going and what it was doing. All the way, when he left the small 493 road and entered the main road, Sumu suddenly felt like he had crossed the teleportation array. It seems that the moment he stepped onto the main road from that small road, he broke into another from one world to world. This is not an illusion, because at the moment when Sumu stepped on the main road, the figure who had been ignoring him and had been unable to influence him turned around. He has the breath of life in darkness. The face of the figure hidden under the hood was a little dry, but it had not reached the level of those eroded corpses. The shadow under the hood flickered with two scarlet rays of light. The figure turned around the moment it found Sumu, and a pair of equally dry hands grew long sharp claws, attacking Sumu. A soft sound. The figure's arms were broken at the same time. After cutting off two arms, Sumu squeezed its head, and the unknown energy formed by the erosion talent poured in frantically, instantly eroding most of the figure's body only. When the unknown energy was about to move towards the figure's head, the head hidden under the hood suddenly burst open. The gray-black slurry splashed everywhere. The figure slowly fell. Then, those slurries and corpses slowly settled under Sumu's gaze. As if from the world where Sumu was located, they settled into another time, and within a few seconds, there were no longer any traces city walls in the city trail main road. This Kingsar city seems to be really divided into layers of space. Staring silently for a while in the direction where the corpse disappeared, Sumu opened his attribute panel above. Several pieces of information have been refreshed. Slavery failed. You killed the living dead. You gained 1 experience point. You have obtained the basic profession template. The transfer information of the living dead. The living dead. Between the living and the dead. After closing the property panel, Sumu looked around the main road. He was surprised to find that the city had undergone tremendous changes. The originally clean streets had piles of filth. The originally white walls were covered with mottled stains, and the trees that were swaying in the wind were left with solitary forks, like dry arms reaching out to the sky. World layering. If it is said that, when Sumu and Nefarian just arrived, the vibrant city of Thrall they saw was the first layer of the world, when night came, they appeared on the city walls and paths, which was the first layer of the world, second-tier world, and now, the main road he is in is the third layer of the world. Layering the world is not an easy task. Even with the attainments and strength of Argus, it is extremely difficult to separate a piece of the world and stratify it, even if it is only a city that has been stripped away. After realizing this, Sumu's heart became a little more cautious. The power of the Dark Order, it seems not as weak as he imagined. Continue on the main road. Every once in a while, several figures walked out of the surrounding trails and merged into the main road, where Sumu was located. The rank of this figure is high and low, and the common feature is that, when he sees a Sumu, he rushes up as if he has lost his mind. Complete disregard of the huge power gap between the two. Without exception, all these figures were enslaved and failed, and they were all beheaded by Sumu. Even Sumu also gained a new career advancement system based on living dead, from the basic rank to the Lord rank. Later, being disturbed by more and more figures, Sumu simply wrapped himself in the dark aura pervading the city, then put on a robe and hood to cover up his figure, and moved on in this way. Those figures that kept pouring out stopped attacking Sumu. Going all the way along the main road, there are more and more figures joining the main road in the surrounding trails, from a few, to dozens to hundreds. Wait until you reach the center of the King of Sar. In this vast square, there are already tens of thousands of figures, covered by robes and hoods. These figures are no exception. It's a strange state between the living and the dead. Starting from the edge of the square, the closer to the center of the square, the higher the ranks of the living dead. From the lowest basic occupation template, all the way to the Lord occupation template. Yes, Lord occupation template instead of the hero class template. Even in the judgment of the rules of the game, these figures belong to monsters, not humans. Among the tens of thousands of living dead, Sumu stepped forward little by little, squeezed into the center of the square, stood beside the living dead in the Lord rank, and observed the square. The few living dead did not respond. It didn't bother Sumu either. Looking around the square, Sumu clearly found that in addition to the area occupied by the tens of thousands of living dead, there was also a passage in the square leading to a temple at this time. The gates of the temple were closed. These living dead are also waiting quietly. Slowly, time passed when a blood moon rose high in the sky, with a slight blood-colored moonlight falling down, and the mist-like dark atmosphere rising from the square complemented each other. The gate of the temple opened. 2 rows of black-armored knights poured out from the temple, occupying both sides of the passage. There are a total of 200 black-armored knights, most of them are lords, including 6 epic black armored knights, and 2 legendary black armored knights. With the appearance of the black armored knights, a group of spellcasters also walked out of the gate of the temple. All the casters were shrouded in black robes and hoods, just like the living dead in the square, but Sumu can tell that these spellcasters are not the living dead, who are between the living and the undead. They are human beings who have changed jobs to the dark professions, just like necromancers. More than a dozen spellcasters, 3 legendary ranks, 5 epic ranks. The spellcaster walking at the forefront is already the pinnacle of the legendary rank. Seeing this scene, Sumu was a little shocked. There is no doubt that these black armored knights, and the humans shrouded in robes and hoods are the legendary Dark Order only. The high-end power that appeared in this square alone has 5 legends and a dozen epics. This power is no less than some first and third class human kingdoms. Further up are those powerful human kingdoms that are qualified to compete for the supremacy. No wonder the Duchy of Sar can remain neutral. No wonder no one can see the reality of the Duchy of Sar. Surrounded by several weak human kingdoms and principalities, there are 5 legends, one of which is a peak legend. The dark sect is to easily deter the surrounding large areas. Coupled with the various strange secret techniques of the Dark Order, the Duchy of Sar has always been unknown, and it is reasonable. Sumu was not in a hurry to shoot. He was standing in this square, with the help of the dark breath and the cover of the robe and hood, quietly observing the Dark Order to see what they were going to do. The knights in black armor are like a guard of honor. After coming out of the temple, they lined up on both sides of the passage and remained motionless. The spellcasters of the Dark Order, led by the legendary Pinnacle spellcaster, walked all the way through the passage formed by the black armored knights, and appeared in the center of the square. Then, just as Sumu watched from the corner of his eye, the legendary Pinnacle spellcaster inserted the staff in his hand into a hole on the ground of the square. Zaza! There was a sound of mechanical operation. The center of the square, the hundreds of square meters of open space vacated by the living dead, and the dark sects began to rise. Under the operation of complex machinery, a huge altar gradually took shape, and appeared in the very center of the square. The black altar seems to be the same as the altar of death, but what appears on this black altar is not the breath of death and darkness directly drawn from the dead seat, but a statue with a very strange shape that can barely be seen as a human shape or statue. Of course, this is not the most important thing. On top of that, there is a small altar in front of this spooky statue, and on that small altar is a black notebook. Same root, the same breath. Sumu, who already owns 3 dead notebooks, can naturally recognize that the black notebook is the last dead notebook he is looking for. The final link of the advanced legend was just around the corner, but Sumu was in no hurry. He continued to hide his breath. See what these members of the Dark Order and the living dead are up to. The black altar rose. Death Note is alive. The legendary peak spellcaster stepped forward step by step and boarded the black altar. Then, good mono, he appeared before the eerie idol, and the small altar with the Death Note fell on his knees respectfully, and began to pray, "Come out of chaos and bring death and darkness to the world. It is immortal, it is supreme, it is eternal. Dark side of the world, the immortal king of eternal existence, please allow your followers to offer their loyalty and faith." After a long prayer, the caster folded his hands, bowed his head reverently, and prayed. Under the altar, around Sumu, the many living dead in the square also began to pray at this moment, offering their loyalty and faith. Sacrificial ceremony farmers. Seeing this scene, Sumu and the surrounding living dead made the same action, but a shocking wave was set off in his heart. It is clear, this is a sacrificial ceremony. The members of the dark sect and the living dead on the square are believers, the strange god on the altar, the existence known as the darkness of the world, and the immortal king. It is the evil god they worship. Yes, Cthulhu rather than real gods. Sumu's judgment is not based on the memory of his previous life, but from the understanding of the rules of the game. Before the 10-year period comes, before those sleeping gods woke up, no real gods existed in the entire game world, no matter which world it was. Perhaps the Dark Order believes in and worships a demigod. Perhaps they believe in and worship only a powerful sanctuary that controls the power of darkness. In short, it cannot be a real god because even the real gods can't break the shackles of the rules of the game and wake up early. Because in this real game world, the rules of the game are the basic rules of the whole world. A sanctuary, or a demigod. Moreover, a sanctuary or a demigod who has mastered the power of darkness and performed dark things will naturally be called an evil god. When this was clear, Sumu finally understood why the strongest of the Dark Order was just the pinnacle of legends, but was able to stratify the world where the Principality of Sar was located, to a level that even Argus could not do things or up. The layering of the world is not done by the Dark Order. Rather, the Duchy of Sar has become the realm of the evil god known as the Immortal King, because of the sacrifices and beliefs of the Dark Order. A heretic god's evil god domain, peeling off a normal world layer by layer, differentiated into layers of strange worlds. This is a normal thing, not just world layering. The residents of the entire Principality of Sar wandered on the edge of life and death, changing back and forth between the living and the dead, which should also be caused by the power of this evil god, Cthulhu. Since he dared to call him an evil god, he was always contaminated with a bit of the power of a god. For Sumu and Nefarian, it was unthinkable, but it seems that it is not difficult for an evil god, who has begun to meddle in belief and pursue the power of gods. Of course, after learning all this, instead of being nervous, Sumu heaved a long sigh of relief. Evil gods are evil gods. 593. Cthulhu believers are Cthulhu believers. Even if this evil god can be believed in, can respond to his followers, and can even influence this world with his own divine power, he is still not in this world after all. Before the 10-year period came, the main material world was the forbidden area for gods, and it was also the forbidden area for those evil gods and demigods who had obtained a trace of divine power. That is, as long as Sumu doesn't kill himself and takes the initiative to contact those existences that contain the power of the evil god will not be able to threaten him. Again, it is the most basic common sense for every existence who is preparing to ascend to the gods, hiding where he is. Even in the days when the gods were sleeping, those demigods and evil gods could hide as far as they wanted. The worship is still going on, following the prayers of the dark sect and the tens of thousands of living dead. A trace of light gathered in the statue of the evil god and gradually disappeared, when the power of belief of all the dark sects and the living dead was condensed and submerged into the evil god statue. A light radiated from the eerie statue, shrouding the death note in it. Under the shroud of the black light, the originally dim death note also seemed to be charged, and began to emit bursts of soft black light. See the scene. The caster rejoiced slightly and said respectfully, "Thank you for the gift of my lord. Under the glory of my lord, the dark sect will grow stronger and stronger, collect more people from the dark side, and dedicate their faith to my lord." Faith is the offering of the dark sect and the living dead to the evil god. The black light contained in the death note is the gift of the evil god himself to the believers, although, for the time being, Sumu still doesn't know what this gift is. Subsequently, the sacrificial ceremony is over. The living dead in the square began to return the same way, and the spellcaster also stood up after repeating the prayer, ready to pick up the charged death note. Before he could get the death note, a black figure quietly emerged from behind him. Cold light now. An old and weak head flew into the sky and fell under the altar. Perhaps I didn't expect that someone could invade the heretic god realm, or maybe I didn't expect that someone would attack him at the base camp of the Dark Order, and at the scene of the sacrificial ceremony. This spellcaster, who had entered the pinnacle of legend and whose profession was the sacrifice of the evil god, had no preparation at all, and was decapitated by Sumu. His body and soul perished. Pulled up the death note and didn't open it. Sumu threw this last note of the dead into his storage space for the first time, finishing the last round. As long as the Dark Order is annihilated, Sumu can fuse the occupation templates he has obtained at any time, create his own legendary occupation template, and step into the legendary rank. Sumu shot. His own breath inevitably leaked when he beheaded the heretic god's sacrifice and put away the death note. The casters and black armored knights under the altar reacted immediately and rushed towards this side. Those who are leaving the living dead are even more crazy, making all kinds of shrill howls and rushing towards this side. Gluttony, eat them all. With Sumu's order, the gluttonous insect king turned into a streamer and flew out, rushing into the crowd of living dead. Soon, the first living dead fell to the ground. The white mist also rose, turning into countless trickles, spreading in all directions. Sumu himself appeared in the dark sect with a phase shift. Death slash and space slash broke out one after another, beheading the dark side existences, who were human but did the things of evil gods. 5 legends, more than a dozen epics, plus many lord professions. This force is already strong, but in front of Sumu, the king of bones who single-handedly crippled the Caesar Empire, in just a few minutes, all the dark followers in the square were killed, turning them into his experience points and free points. Experience is better than nothing. The free points, but the total number of free points that Sumu has, once again climbed to more than 1,000 points. There are not many members of the Dark Order in the temple. After killing all the dark believers in the entire temple, Sumu was able to kill hundreds of dark believers, but the weakest of these dark cultists are all lords. That is to say, the king city of Sar gathered all the elites of the entire Dark Order. Other members of the Dark Order are very likely to be distributed in other cities, or even the entire continent. If you add all those dark believers, the Dark Order is a truly powerful force, and it is still a powerful hidden force, hidden in the dark side of history and unknown. Gluttonous Insect King is faster than Sumu. When Sumu slaughtered all the dark believers in the entire temple, and returned to the Black Altar, the bone-eating demon insects split by the gluttonous Insect King had spread throughout every space in the Principality of Sar. Not only those living dead were eaten up, but even the corpses lying in their own homes were all eaten up, leaving only a piece of dry human skin. At this time, Sumu took out the Death Note again. The Death Note originally contained a kind of mysterious power. After being blessed by the evil god, the danger contained in it even increased. Take out the Death Note. Sumu did not risk opening it, but injected the unknown energy generated by the erosion talent into this note of the dead as before, and began to remove the danger and imprints in it. This time, he erodes very slowly. It took half an hour for the Death Note to be completely eroded without energy, except for the power of the evil god and the mysterious imprint, and all dangers were eliminated. Then, a series of system beeps sounded from Sumu's mind again. Ding! You have obtained the transfer information of the legendary profession template, Knight of Scourge. You have obtained the transfer information for the elite profession template, Grey Knight. You have obtained the transfer information for the warrior profession template, Black Knight. You have obtained the transfer information of Lord profession template, Evil Knight. You have obtained the job transfer information of Epic job template, Blood Soul Knight. You have obtained the job transfer information for the legendary job template, Nightmare Knight. You have obtained the transfer information of the elite occupation template, Cthulhu Believer. You have obtained the transfer information of the legendary profession template, Cthulhu Sacrifice. Dozens of messages in a row, except for the first piece of information, that he obtained the transfer information of the legendary career template of Knight of Scourge, which made up for the last piece of the puzzle of his advanced legend. Remaining tips, all are two professional systems exclusive to the Dark Order, the Evil Knight occupation system, and the Evil God Sacrifice occupation system. To know, these two occupational systems are originally dark occupations, and Sumu can use them as occupational systems for undead camp players with only a few changes, and both of these two career systems can be seamlessly connected with the two career templates that Sumu obtained before, basic rank Living Dead, and advanced rank Dark Side. It is equivalent to directly giving Sumu two complete career systems, or a complete career system from the basic rank to the legendary rank. No wonder, when the evil god statue is blessed, the evil god's sacrifice will be so happy. Presumably, the occupation system of the entire dark sect is all derived from the gift of the evil god. Only with the gift of the evil god can they continuously cultivate the powerhouses of the Lord. Epic and legendary ranks in these two professional systems. As mist is to the barbarians, Death Note is in hand. The professional template of the Knight of the Scourge is also available. Sumu can integrate the professional template he obtained at any time, and this is the biggest surprise. These two professional systems, that originally belonged to the Dark Order, were unexpected joys. With these two gains alone, Sumu's trip to the Principality of Sar this time was worthwhile, but after throwing the restored Death Note into the storage space, Sumu did not leave in a hurry. Synthesizing his own exclusive legendary job template, he looked at the evil god statue. He feels this evil god statue has an attraction to itself, just like when he was a weak skeleton at the time, when he devoured the bones of the skeleton with the erosion talent for the first time. The Cthulhu statue is undoubtedly dangerous. Even if his strength was invincible on the mainland, Sumu didn't want or dare to provoke an evil god, but after a careful rush, Sumu still believed in his own feelings and the erosion talent he possessed. Unknown energy slowly flows out. Completely wrap one hand in it. With a cautious mood, Sumu slowly covered his hand on the hideous and eerie statue of the evil god. Next moment, his pupils suddenly widened. Erosion talent has never disappointed Sumu. It was before, and it is now. When wrapping his palm with unknown energy and covering the evil god statue, Sumu's eyes open up suddenly. At this moment, he seems to have broken into an unknown space from the King of Thrall, and in the center of this world stands a terrifying figure, evil, powerful, magnificent, even stalwart. It is difficult for Sumu to describe the horror of the figure. When he saw the figure, he lowered his head subconsciously, as if he was afraid that his eyes would attract the attention of the figure and bring him a great disaster. That's the evil god. To be precise, that figure is a little bit of the will of the evil god that the Dark Order believes in. The unknown space is the space contained in the evil god statue. That terrifying figure is the will of the heretic god differentiated from his own body, which serves as his positioning in this main material world, and also serves as a receiver for accepting the power of faith and blessing believers. Such a little will should have no own thoughts. Only when the evil god's eyes notice this place will the terrifying figure manifested by this will turn into the evil god's projection, possessing the evil god's terrifying power. Obviously, the evil god's eyes are not here, or perhaps the unknown energy generated by the erosion talent is already powerful enough to isolate the will of the heretic god. So, when Sumu broke into this unknown space, the figure just stood in the center of this space, motionless, like a statue, and like a phantom. Uncontrollably let out a breath, Sumu's mood became more cautious. He never doubted his potential. As long as there is enough time, Sumu is confident that he will grow into a terrifying existence like a sanctuary, a demigod, or even a real god, but he grew up too short. From rebirth to the beginning of the game world, it only took 2 or 3 years. In 2 or 3 years, the growth from a fragile little skeleton to an epic rank that dominates the entire continent is enough to show Sumu's terrifying potential, enough to show the power of erosion talent. But such Sumu, in front of an evil god, is still weak and pitiful. If he hadn't faced only a little will of the evil god, and if Sumu could not clearly feel the most attractive attraction of the evil god statue, I'm afraid he would have left the city as soon as he got the death note, away from everything related to the evil god things. And now, he wants to try. He wanted to see why this statue of the evil god, and the will of the evil god, in the unknown space attracted him, carefully urging the unknown energy to gradually invade the statue of the evil god. In Sumu's eyes, during the process of continuously inputting unknown energy into the evil god statue, the space contained in this evil god statue is also changing. A shadow gradually emerged from the edge of this space, and began to cover the entire space. This shadow is the manifestation of the erosion progress of the evil god statue by unknown energy. Slowly, unknown energy gradually invaded the statue of the evil god. That shadow gradually came from all directions, covering all the spaces in the unknown space, except the projection of the evil god. Next, it is to face the figure that represents the will of the evil god. Taking a long breath, Sumu gritted his teeth and was ruthless, raising the output of unknown energy to the limit he could achieve. Next moment, in the unknown space, the shadow that almost shrouded the entire space also instantly wrapped the projection of the evil god, and penetrated towards the inside of the projection of the evil god at an extremely fast speed. In this moment, Sumu seems to feel a terrifying force coming along the route of the unknown energy pouring into his body. At the same time, a series of system prompts sounded in his mind one after another, but at this most critical moment, Sumu was completely indifferent to the content of the system beep because he knew that he was taking food from the tiger's mouth. Even if it was just a little will, even if it was just a projection, he was facing an evil god, a true evil god, who is at least a demigod and can absorb the power of faith and develop his own followers. Once the body of the evil god pays attention to this place, once the body of the evil god perceives the changes here, even if the evil god is far away from countless spaces and worlds, the evil god can easily destroy himself. Under such circumstances, he did not dare to be distracted in the slightest, and could only concentrate all of his mind, eroding the evil god statue at the fastest speed, and also eroding the evil god's will in this unknown space. Maybe a few minutes, or maybe a long time, when the shadow in the unknown space completely eroded the projection of the evil god, and penetrated into every inch of space, in the projection of the evil god, the terrifying projection collapsed. Not just the projection of the evil god, the unknown space contained in the evil god statue also completely collapsed at this moment. The unknown space disappeared, and Sumu's vision returned to the king's city of Thrall. What surprised him was that the evil god statue on the altar, which was carved out of unknown materials, also collapsed at this moment and completely smashed, turned into a pile of powder. At the same time, the surrounding environment is also changing. The world that was originally layered has returned to a normal world. For the first time, this city shrouded in shadows has revealed its true face to Sumu. It's in ruins. It is a ruin that has been abandoned for several years, 10 years, or even decades. Its inhabitants are long dead. It is only because of the power of the heretic god domain that he has been bound to the edge of life and death. Without the arrival of Sumu, and the devourer of the gluttonous insect king, when the evil god statue shatters, and the evil god domain disappears, those residents will not be transformed into undead, but will disappear with the wind. They died decades ago. At the moment when the evil god statue was established, and the evil god domain appeared, it was already dead, only forced to stay in this world. Eyes swept from the surrounding, Sumu stared at the strange city in front of him. Small town is fake. The king city of Sar is false. Those residents and professionals who live normally during the day are false, and those figures who turn into corpses and sleep peacefully in their own homes in the dark are also false. Even the strength of the gluttonous insect king is false. He was only influenced by the heretic god domain, and he just found a reason for himself to regard all this as the real thing. From the beginning, there is no Sar duchy. This small principality was destroyed decades ago. Only a rubble remains, perhaps. In this country that is left in ruins, only the Dark Order and the living dead who are believers are the only real existence stand on the altar. Suma's eyes were full of shock. Zero, ask for flowers, unknowingly fell into the realm of the evil god, and unknowingly regarded the false as the truth. This kind of terrifying power, that surpassed the legend, surpassed the sanctuary, and was comparable to the true god made him shudder. Fortunately, came in by myself. The statue of the evil god has been smashed, the domain of the evil god has disappeared, and even the will of the evil god put into this world has been eroded by the erosion talent, and there is no trace. Without that bit of will as a positioning, that terrifying evil god would have nothing to do with the Anduin continent. Whether it's calm or violent, it has nothing to do with Sumu, unless there is another undead notebook on Anduin continent, and there is another evil god sacrifice in the dark sect. We can use this as a basis to contact that evil god. Otherwise, never try to come to this world. After a long time, only then did Suma's mood calm down. It is nothing to break into the principality of Sar. It is nothing to slaughter the headquarters of the Dark Order, but the madness of facing the projection of the evil god at the last moment, and the shock after the disappearance of the evil god's realm, still brought a huge influence to Sumu. Now it's all over. He also finally had time to check his harvest this time. He eroded the projection of an evil god at great risk. If he has not obtained enough gains to satisfy him, then this adventure is not worth it. Sumu opened his own properties panel. A series of information prompts have already been refreshed from the properties panel. Just a glance, Sumu held her breath. You have absorbed the source of the evil god, and your body has been greatly enhanced. Your strength attribute plus 1000. You have absorbed the source of the evil god, and your body has been greatly enhanced. Your agility attribute plus 1000. You have absorbed the source of the evil god, and your body has been greatly enhanced. Your constitution attribute plus 1000. You have absorbed the source of the evil god, and your body has been greatly enhanced. Your spiritual attribute plus 1000. You absorbed the source of the evil god, your spiritual attribute plus 1000. All in all, dozens of information tips, Sumu counted. Just by eroding the projection of the evil god, and devouring the source of the evil god, the growth of the four-dimensional attribute he obtained has reached as many as 20,000 points, not the total. But his four-dimensional attributes have all increased by 20,000 points, although the four-dimensional attribute of 20,000 points can be obtained even after several levels up. But what he devoured was just the projection of an evil god. Should say, is the evil god really so terrifying? In any case, the four-dimensional attribute skyrocketed by 20,000 points, which was always a huge gain. It is not in vain for Sumu to risk a great danger to corrupt an evil god. But just when Sumu was about to close the attribute panel, go look for Nefarian, and leave here, his eyes inadvertently swept across the column of free points, etc. How many free points did I have before? It seems to be 1050 points now. What? Blinking his eyes, Sumu nodded and counted, 1, 10, 100, 10,000 at this time. The total number of free points lying on his free point column is 1050 points. Not only the four-dimensional attributes have skyrocketed by 20,000 points, Suma's free points also skyrocketed by 10,000 points. The growth of the four-dimensional attributes was clearly recorded on the attribute panel, because he plundered the origin of the evil god through his talent and strengthened his body. It's like he absorbs the essence from the bones. But free points. Sumu squinted his eyes slightly, and the faint blue flames in his pupils kept beating. He has a guess. The evil god statue, or the energy that can be contained in the evil god projection, is nothing more than the source of the evil god, the divine power of the evil god, and the power of faith that the evil god has just absorbed. The source of the evil god has been swallowed by him, which is used to improve his physical strength, that is, the four-dimensional attribute. So, source of free points. Is it from the divine power of the evil god, or from the power of faith that he has just absorbed? Compare the two. Sumu is more inclined towards the latter after all. Before meeting the heretic god, the many free points he obtained had nothing to do with divine power. On the contrary, starting from the elite rank, His enemies can provide him with free points. The sign of an elite monster is that it initially possesses wisdom. What's the connection between the two? Only monsters with wisdom and reaching the elite rank can provide freedom points. Absorbing the power of faith contained in the statue of the evil god, his freedom, 593 points, skyrocketed vaguely. Sumu felt as if he had grasped the essence of free points, but it seems something is missing. After thinking quietly for a long time, he finally gave up. There are too few clues to deduce, at least only after he stepped into the sanctuary, or even the demigod realm. Could he truly come into contact with the power of faith? Perhaps, at that time, he will be able to figure out the essence of free points. Have to say, the skyrocketing free points brought a huge surprise to Sumu. 4-dimensional attributes can also be obtained by leveling up. Compared to his original 4-dimensional attributes, the added 20,000 points of 4-dimensional attributes would not surprise him too much. And free points, a full 10,000 free points. For a long time to come, he doesn't need to worry about the source of free points. When he encounters the right skills or knowledge, he can also let go of adding points in evolution, and he does not need to buckle down and save free points. Here it is. Sumu is ready to leave. The occupation templates of the 4 legendary ranks have already been obtained, and it is time for him to make a breakthrough and let his ranks from the epic ranks to the legendary ranks. Subsequently, taking a step forward, Sumu appeared beside Nefarian. When he entered the 3rd layer world and fought against the dark sect and the living dead, the ghost dragon was trapped in the 2nd layer world. Panicked, fear spreads. This ghost dragon breathed out its breath of death again and again, turning a quarter of the king's city of Thrall from ruins into more complete ruins, covered with a thick layer of black ice now. The Cthulhu sculpture shattered, the Cthulhu domain disappeared, and the ghost dragon, who was frightened one after another, finally reunited with Sumu. With the ghost dragon, Sumu returned to the corner of the plaza in the heart of King Sar's city. After spending a lot of magic crystals, he repaired the teleportation array that had been abandoned for decades. Subsequently, step into the teleportation formation with Nefarian. After a slight fluctuation of magic power, 2 figures, one big and one small, disappeared into the ruins, City of Bones. When Sumu and Nefarian walked out of the teleportation array, it caused quite a stir. At this time, the City of Bones has become the base camp for players of the Undead Camp. More than 500,000 Undead Camp players. Even if only part of them stayed in the City of Bones, the rest either ran out to do quests, or ran out to collect materials. After all, this dead city became lively. Returned to the City of Bones, Sumu did not retreat immediately, but went to the outskirts of the City of Bones first and settled the last quest, about the Book of the Dead. The checkout process was smooth. This time, Sumu is indeed settled according to the standard of epic rank. Instead of directly combining the rewards of the 2 quests as the first time, raising the rank of the quest reward by 1 rank. So far, the 4 undead notes, Lich Note, Ghost Note, Skull Note and Death Note have all fallen into Sumu's hands. There are no other dead notes on Anduin continent, and the first main quest he released, that is, the legendary main quest to find the dead notes, naturally does not exist. The exchange this time still attracted the attention of many players. With the first exchange as a demonstration, players from the Game Guild or the Undead Camp have experienced a lot of exchange this time, and there was no conflict. Soon, the exchange is over. The player from the Undead Camp successfully got his reward, and the Game Guild, where the assassin player, who submitted the quest clue, was also successfully obtained the equipment and occupation template he wanted. But when the Undead Camp player, who was responsible for submitting tasks and receiving rewards, looked at the rewards he had received and fantasized about whether he could encounter such a good opportunity again and only submit a task to get rich rewards, his eyes swept across his taskbar inadvertently. Then, he was stunned because of the discovery of him. The 3 main quests that were originally displayed on his taskbar had become 2 at some point. The first main quest, that is, the main quest to find the Book of the Undead, and the highest reward can reach the legendary rank. I don't know when it has disappeared. System bug? Probably not. There are no bugs in the game world. Even if it was a system bug recognized by players in the past, it was later confirmed that it was not a bug. That is, in the first main quest, all 4 books of the dead have been found. For a time, the player of the Undead Camp was full of consternation. With the first discoverer, there is the second soon. The news that the legendary main quest of finding the Book of the Undead was completely completed spread among the players in the entire Undead Camp, and even the entire Anduin continent. Many players beat their chests and feet, mourning that they missed the opportunity to take 1 step to the sky. Many more game guilds quietly inquired, wanting to know which game guild or which player completed the clues of the other 2 books of the dead. After all, players do not know that Sumu has already obtained the Lich Note and the Ghost Note, and the 2 quest settlements that broke out in the game are also in full view. Now that the main quest has disappeared, the only explanation is that there are 2 game guilds, or players who submitted quest clues, and completed 2 quests without anyone knowing. Every Book of the Dead is related to a legendary job template, or epic job template, and is related to the ownership of a piece of legendary equipment or epic equipment. Ordinary players don't care, but every game guild that is committed to developing and strengthening itself cannot be ignored. They are afraid that their opponents will get rewards and suddenly rise up, which in turn will suppress or even destroy their game guild 0. Such an example, not uncommon in other game worlds. At the same time, the players of the Undead Camp also saw the second change of the Undead Camp. The second change is Main Quest 3, The Rise of the Undead. This faction main quest is divided into 3 stages. The first stage of the task has been completed. Every player of the Undead Camp can see from their own attribute panel that the total number of contribution points of the Undead Camp has exceeded 1 million points at an unknown time, and 3 days later, skill library is open. For a time, the players of the Undead Camp ran to tell each other. They no longer focus on which game guild or which player found the clues to the other 2 books of the dead, but on the skill library. As an Undead Camp, as a monster occupation, they all suffer from insufficient skills. The first phase of the faction's main mission has been completed. Skill library open. Even if they can only exchange 1 or 2 skills, it is enough to greatly improve their combat power. 3 days, very short. When the news spread, more and more players who were still doing quests or collecting materials outside the City of Bones returned to the City of Bones, waiting for the arrival in 3 days, and waiting for the opening of the Undead Skill Library. Obviously, whether it is the cancellation of the first legendary main quest or the completion of the first stage of the 3rd faction main quest, it is all done by Sumu. Actually, in the entire Undead Camp, only Sumu, the opener and leader, can release or cancel the main quest. The second main quest, Sumu didn't move, although today, he no longer needs to hunt the legendary undead to obtain its occupation template, but the existence of this main quest can still greatly enhance the enthusiasm and cohesion of the Undead Camp players. No need, it doesn't matter. In case the players really find clues of the legendary undead, it's a big deal. Sumu will run to enslave the legendary undead and enhance the strength and heritage of the City of Bones. No matter what, he will not lose. For the first main quest, all 4 of the notebooks of the dead have been obtained. Even if Sumu has the same idea and wants to keep the first main quest, the rules of the game do not allow it. Because there are no other dead notes on Anduin continent, players cannot submit false leads. Same. Sumu also cannot issue a fake mission for a mission that no longer exists. Therefore, the first legendary mainline quest can only be completed and cancelled. The 3rd camp main quest. After completing the task of the death note with the player, Sumu quietly adjusted the total contribution of the Undead Camp to 1 million, reaching the standard for opening the Undead Skill Library. Undead Skill Library, Sumu is ready. In the past few months, he has eroded many heroes, read the memories of countless undead, and finally prepared a variety of skills covering various categories, and a total number of thousands. Enough to meet the needs of the Undead Camp players. Even in the next long period of time, this Undead Skill Library can meet the needs of players. As for why 3 days later, because he wants to fuse his own exclusive professional template in these 3 days. Advanced Legend. Only the Advanced Legend has obtained the last professional template. He can open the Undead Skill Library with confidence, and use this as an opportunity to harvest the player's experience value on a large scale. Go back to the Castle of the Dead. After speaking with Angians, Carola, Argus and others, Sumu began his own advancement, this time Legend. Starting from a basic professional template without vulnerable skeletons, to the point where he is about to enter the legendary stage. Sumu's experience over the past 2 years can be described as magnificent. Legendary ranks, legendary occupation. This will be Sumu's last career template, and it will also be his most powerful career template. The legendary occupation is the end of the occupation inheritance system. Relying on the professional inheritance system, the peak that a living being or an undead can reach is only a legendary rank. Going up, whether it is to break through the sanctuary or enter the advanced Demigod, what you need is not a professional template, but a real big chance and great perseverance. If you don't find your own chance, if you don't find your own opportunity, no matter how powerful the 4-dimensional attribute is, and no matter how much experience you gain, you will not be able to break through to the sanctuary level. For this last career template, Sumu naturally can't take it too seriously. In the ancient Castle of the Dead, there are no other figures. Agnes and the Death Knights were stationed at the entrance of the Castle of the Undead. Mist took 10 epic undead to guard the side of the Castle of the Undead, Nefarian ran directly to the spire of the castle of the undead. Argus holding a staff, looking at the entire undead castle from the window of the mage tower. Even Kerala, with her ghosts, constantly patrols the undead castle and the castle above the throne. Sumu opened his own properties panel. Following his choice, 4 glittering career templates appeared in his field of vision, lined up in front of his eyes. The legendary occupation of the Lich family, the Lich King. The legendary occupation of the Ghost family, the Spirit of Annihilation. The legendary occupation of the Skeleton family, the Corpse Juggernaut. The legendary occupation of the Death Knight, the Scourge Knight. The 4 legendary occupation templates correspond to the 4 oldest and most orthodox undead races, namely Lich, Ghost, Skeleton and Death Knight. It can be said, these 4 undead races include all worlds and all kinds of undead. 4 professional templates are lined up. Sumu tried to add the 2 legendary job templates of Nightmare Knight and Cthulhu Priest, but failed. Nightmare Knight and Cult Priest are also legendary classes, but they are the dark professions in the human camp, not the undead professions. Even these 2 closest dark occupations that the undead rely on are difficult to join this occupational fusion, and many other legendary occupation templates that he has collected are naturally unable to join. Fortunately, these 4 occupations are enough. 4 occupations, 4 undead races. Sumu is very curious. What will the legendary profession fused with these 4 profession templates? What will it look like? There is no expression on the face. The ancient well in my heart does not waver. Taking a look at the free points he has now, Sumu directly invested 100 free points into these 4 career templates. 100 points is not enough. Looking at the 4 career templates that were glowing slightly, Sumu did not fluctuate and put 100 free points into them again once, twice, 3 times, 5 times, when exactly 10 times, when a total of 1000 free points were put into it. The 4 legendary career templates that appeared in front of Sumu finally shattered and completely merged together. This is a bright light. It was obviously pitch black, but Sumu could see the bright feeling. It was like a joke he had heard in the real world in his previous life. Colorful black. The light in front of me is also dazzling darkness. Occupation, infusion, template, in metamorphosis. Sumu watched the group of light that was constantly merging and changing and waited silently. Time, little by little, maybe just a few minutes, or maybe a few hours have passed. When that group of light finally dimmed and disappeared, a brand new career template finally appeared in front of Sumu's eyes. This is exclusive to him. Legendary career template. Template, Undead Tyrant. Rank, legendary occupation template. Bonus, life plus 10 million, magic plus 5 million, strength asterisk 10,000, agility asterisk 10,000, constitution asterisk 10,000, spirit asterisk 10,000. Skill, to be determined. Legendary career. Undead Tyrant. Sumu couldn't calm down any longer when he saw this professional template that was finally integrated and unique to him. No skills have been selected. Therefore, the occupation template displayed in front of Sumu is relatively simple, only showing the bonuses of health, magic and 4-dimensional attributes, but the 10 million HP bonus is 20 times that of the epic job template bonus. The bonus of 5 million mana points is also 20 times that of the epic job template. The addition of the 2 attributes of health and mana brought by this legendary job template alone makes Sumu no longer have to worry about his survivability and magic endurance. The bonuses of 4-dimensional attributes are all 10,000 perhaps. Compared with Sumu's epic occupation template, Death Monarch, the bonus of this 4-dimensional attribute is not much improved, only about 2 or 3 times 12. But when his eyes were fixed on this occupation template, the information that appeared in Sumu's mind was to let him know 10,000 points is the limit of attribute bonus. Whether it is a manticore or a manticore, whether it is a dragon or a dragon, even the reincarnation of the gods, the bonus of the 4-dimensional attributes brought by the legendary occupation template has a final limit of 10,000 points, such as the legendary dragon, as the entire Anduin continent, even the most famous legendary race in all the main material worlds, even the most talented legendary dragon. The 4-dimensional attribute bonus it obtains in the legendary rank is only around 5,000 points. Range hovers, just beats average dragon, so other races can't even reach this limit. If there is a god who is reincarnated and rebuilt with his own memory and has all kinds of incredible powers when he was a god, can one of his attributes be brought closer to the limit of the bonus of 10,000 points? It can only be approached infinitely, but it can never be reached, and it can only be one of the 4-dimensional attributes. What about Sumu? Not only did he reach the true limit of 10,000 points of this attribute bonus, but he also used the professional fusion again and again to make his 4-dimensional attribute bonus all reach this limit. In this sense, since then, Sumu has been the most potential existence in the entire game world. Even the gods can't compare with him in this respect. Of course, potential is potential. Strength is strength. Sumu was still just an epic until he merged the template, completed the job transfer, and turned this potential into strength by relying on the level upgrade. Even if this epic is enough to smash countless legends, call properties limit, he let out a long breath and forcibly suppressed the infinite surprise that rose in his heart. Sumu looked at the skills he could choose this time. 1. Dark Ritual. 2. Blade Storm. 3. Annihilation Wailing. 4. Sky Shading Ring. 5. The Wrath of the Tyrant. 6. Death Pursuit. 7. Body of a Tyrant. 8. The Return of the Dead. 8 skills. Still 2 out of 8. Looking from top to bottom, swept over these 8 skills, and the relevant information of these skills also appeared in his mind in a timely manner. The first 4 skills correspond to the Lich King, Corpse Juggernaut, Annihilation Spirit and Scourge Knight respectively. It is the signature skill of these 4 legendary undead bosses. The last 4 skills are specially generated by the rules of the game for the profession of Dead Tyrant, corresponding to the 4 attributes of strength, agility, physique and spirit, respectively. The first 4 skills. After careful consideration, Sumu chose Aura of Scourge. In the previous 2 ranks, he chose Aura of Death and Aura of Fear, respectively. In the last step, Sumu didn't want to drop Aura of Scourge. Halo skills can be said to be one of the most special skills in the game world. Even after getting it, Sumu is rarely used Death Aura and Fear Aura, but he can't miss it by instinct. With the intuition born after he obtained the Erosion talent, he always felt that the Halo skills of the Death Knights might be one of the most important reliances for his future. They may be an important part of enhancing one's combat power, or they may be an opportunity for oneself to cross the legend and climb to a higher realm. All in all, rather than wasting a choice to choose a powerful skill, Su 593, the Animal Husbandry, will also include the Aura of Divine Scourge into his skill column. One remaining skill. After deliberation, Sumu chose the Body of a Tyrant. Without him, 4 skills, corresponding to strength, agility, constitution and spirit. Sumu does not lack attack, speed, life, and magic skills, but the powerful immunity to control skills brought by the skill Body of Tyrant is what he lacks the most now. Halo of Scourge. Halo skill, active skill. Turning on the Halo of Scourge will greatly enhance the skill power and effect of the Death Halo and the Halo of Fear. Turning on the Halo of Scourge will ignore attribute restraint, transform the power of light with the power of darkness, and use the power of darkness to transform the power of light with the power of darkness. Instead of light, end hope with death. Body of a Tyrant. Passive skill greatly increases the physical resistance and magic resistance of the skill. There is a great chance to avoid the effects of control skills such as restraint, imprisonment, seal, and sleep. Mandatory saves to penetrate, bleed, and incapacitate, burning, freezing and other skill effects bring continuous damage. Skill selection is complete. The last link of Suma's exclusive legendary occupation template, Dead Tyrant, has finally been completed. Subsequently, a crisp system prompt sounded in Suma's mind. Humph. You have obtained the transfer information of the legendary profession template, Undead Tyrant. The conditions are met. Do you want to change jobs? Start transfer. Taking a long breath, Sumu chose to change jobs. Next moment, the rolling torrent gushed out of the void, pouring into Suma's body like a great river like the Yangtze River, and also transformed his body, allowing him to evolve from the dead monarch of the epic rank to the undead tyrant of the legendary rank. Not just a torrent in the void. When Sumu chose to change careers, the unique legendary career template was integrated into his body outside the castle and the city. The terrifying coercion spreads out, and the endless breath of death and darkness is also drawn at this moment, madly gathering towards the undead castle, its center. It is the king of skeletons who is still evolving. Sumu, City of Bones. Agnes, Carola and Mist are still conscientiously guarding the castle of the undead, even if they know that no enemy will appear at this time. It is the same to invade the City of Bones within the city. The hundreds of thousands of players who rushed to the City of Bones in advance because the undead skill library was about to open were already stunned. They looked up into the sky. I looked at that because Sumu advanced, swallowing the endless breath of death and darkness to form a huge storm. At this time, a huge funnel has been formed, covering a range of hundreds of kilometers, centered on the ancient castle of the undead. The black aura of death and darkness, the white energy of heaven and earth, the energy of various elements, all the energy contained in the heaven and earth are drawn by this huge funnel-shaped vortex and converge towards the castle of the undead, and finally pour into Sumu and the body. The power of this vortex is so great that even the dark sky covered in the City of Bones was torn apart layer by layer, and countless breaths of death and darkness were drawn out and gathered in the undead castle. This city of bones, which was originally sheltered by the dark sky, has returned to the sun for most of it. Seeing this scene, the players were shocked. The King of Bones, Sumu, one is obviously only an epic rank, but he is above the legendary rank with the Ghost Dragon mount. The Fear Knight is the bottom, the Ghost Princess is the maid, the Lich King is the assistant, and with his own power to coerce the entire Andu because of the terrifying undead boss in the mainland. Now, he is breaking through. Further advanced, it is hard for players to imagine that the King of Bones in the epic rank is already so powerful that no one can match. If he succeeds in becoming a legend, what else can stop him? Legendary ranks. Whether it is a legendary hero or a legendary boss, players have seen a lot, but there has never been in existence. Just from the epic step advanced legend, such a big movement has been made, and such a terrifying celestial phenomenon has been drawn. A time, the players stood there. They quietly stared at the huge primordial vortex in the sky, stared at the undead castle shrouded in darkness in the distance, and waited for the advancement of the King of Bones to end nature. Taking pictures and videos is also indispensable. This kind of terrifying scene like the sky is changing, but you can't see it all the time. If they miss this time, I am afraid they will never see such a terrifying and powerful advanced scene again. In the Mage Tower, when Argus saw this scene, his color changed slightly. The high-level undead are guarding the castle of the undead, and the players of the undead camp are shaking this terrifying scene. But no one has noticed that the dark sky has been torn apart, and no one has noticed the loss of the breath of death and darkness in the City of Bones. No one noticed that the sun was shining, and the many undead who were still patrolling the city were weakening. When he saw this scene, Argus rushed out of the Mage Tower and rushed into the altar of death. Pieces of magic crystals are embedded in the altar of death. Countless runes form a magic circle, and are also engraved on the altar. With his knowledge as the foundation and his own strength as the basis, Argus has multiplied the number of death and darkness auras drawn by this death altar in the shortest possible time. The breath of death and darkness, that was several times larger than before, was pulled out from the plane of death, and after the transformation of the death altar, it turned into a thicker beam of light rising into the sky. The dark sky ray opened. The breath of death and darkness also pervaded the City of Bones again. With the support of more and more pure death aura and dark aura, the huge vortex above the undead castle gradually stabilized. Seeing this scene, Argus finally breathed a sigh of relief. Standing on the edge of the death altar, staring at the huge vortex above the undead castle, the old Lich King felt a little pain in the ass. Is Your Excellency Sumu really advancing to a legend? I'm afraid this kind of momentum is nothing more than the advanced sanctuary. Fortunately, the old man moves fast. Otherwise, when Your Excellency Sumu has completed the advanced level, I am afraid that there will not be a few undead left in the City of Bones. Yes, except for Argus. I am afraid no one knows how dangerous the scene just now is. This danger is not aimed at Sumu, nor is it aimed at the epic or legendary undead bosses such as Argus and Nefarian, but is aimed at the many middle and low-level undead and undead camp players in the City of Bones. Breakthrough this time. The amount of death and darkness Sumu needed was not only beyond his own imagination, but also beyond Argus' imagination. Even the dark sky is torn apart. Even the altar of death can't be served. If Sumu was allowed to devour it, and swallowed up the breath of death and darkness in the entire City of Bones, Sumu, who was still unable to meet his advanced requirements, would probably swallow the numerous undead and undead camps in the City of Bones player. The breath of death and darkness in their bodies will be pulled out as much as possible. The players are only dead once. The undead have pulled away all the breath of death and darkness, but they are completely dead. Fortunately, Argus moves fast enough. When the dark sky was half swallowed, the expansion of the death altar was completed, which was enough to supply Sumu's demand for the breath of death and the breath of darkness. Otherwise, this City of Bones will really become a city of death, as he said. Next is to wait. When Lord Sumu has absorbed enough breath of death and darkness, he will successfully advance to legendary only. Argus was a little confused. After this advancement, I am afraid that Your Excellency Sumu will be even stronger. In the past, he was unmatched, and after the advanced stage, he may really have the terrifying strength to destroy the entire Anduin continent by himself. Ugh. With a long sigh, Argus no longer thought about it. He will not stop, nor can he stop. The fate of the many creatures on this continent depends on Sumu's own thoughts. Time flies. That huge energy vortex stayed on the undead castle for a full day. After swallowing the massive amount of death aura and dark aura, the huge energy vortex finally stopped swallowing, gradually shrink and gradually dissipate. Undead castle on the throne. Sumu, who has been pulling the torrent of energy gushing out of the void with his whole body, uses the torrent of energy to transform his body and promote himself to advanced level, and Sumu also wakes up at this time. Advanced is complete. At this time, Sumu finally stepped into the legendary stage. Sitting high on the throne, a faint pressure radiated from his body, radiating in all directions. This coercion, like dragon might, also like divine might, it is the suppression of the life level above other species that naturally emanates after a species transcends the ordinary. Sumu at this time, his appearance has changed slightly again. The height reached 2 meters, the armor on the body was engraved with dark golden patterns, and even the helmet covering the head became a crown style. Undead Tyrant, feeling the strength of his own advancement, Sumu murmured to himself, "Ding, you have advanced to legendary. Your exclusive title King of Bones has advanced." Exclusive title, King of Bones removed. You get the exclusive title Lord of the Undead. With the system prompt sound in his mind, Sumu opened his attribute panel Undead Master. The information about this newly acquired exclusive title also slowly emerged in his mind. Undead Master, exclusive title. Title description: rise in the skeleton, grow in the darkness, dominate the undead. Rising on the corpses of countless undead, you have become the emperor of the undead family. When entering the battle state, any undead standing on the opposite side of you will be subject to the fourfold judgment of strength, agility, constitution, and spirit. Every time the judgment fails, the enemy's four-dimensional attributes will be forcibly reduced. 10%. The Undead Rule. This is Sumu's new exclusive title. This new title is the continuation of the King of Bones, and its function is the ultimate enhanced version of the King of Bones. The original Sumu can only deter the skeleton family. The current Sumu, all the undead standing on his opposite side, will be subject to the fourfold judgment of strength, agility, constitution and spirit, and, with his newly acquired legendary job template, and the 4D attribute bonus that he has all reached the limit, it can be said that as Sumu's 4D attribute becomes stronger and stronger, any undead standing on his opposite will be forced to do so before he starts. 40% weaken 4D attributes, comprehensive and strong. Such is the terrifying effect of this new title. The Undead Master. Sumu was a little confused. In Anduin Continent, he is indeed a well-deserved Undead Master, but leaving Anduin Continent, entering a wider world, and facing higher-level enemies, when I think that I have to step into the sanctuary, Li Nua Zhao, God claims to be the Undead Master in front of the undead or even the undead. Sumu is a bit of a pain in the ass. Fortunately, a title is a title. Sumu would say that he is the master of the undead without seeing anyone. Presumably those powerful undead who stepped into the sanctuary, or even the demigod realm before him would not care about a title, right? Perhaps. With the end of the advancement, many of Sumu's skills can be improved again, but he wasn't in a hurry to improve his skills. This advanced movement not only shocked many players in the City of Bones, but also shocked Argus and other high-level undead. Even Sumu himself did not think of it. Skills can evolve at any time. At present, the first thing he has to do is to appear in front of everyone and to appease people's hearts. The last advance is over. Undead Tyrant is already his last career young. He can finally harvest experience points without any burden, and improve his level as soon as possible. Boom! The rolling demonic energy erupted and shot straight into the sky. The entire undead castle is shrouded in it. Under the shroud of the black mist that kept spreading, Sumu walked out of the castle of the undead step by step, as if stepping on a layer of invisible steps, step by step towards the sky above the City of Bones. With a gesture of dominating the world, he appeared in front of the hundreds of thousands of undead camp players.
Thank you for watching Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share and subscribe. Have a great day.